one day in 2008, out of the blue, it was the Friday before Mother's Day, I got a call from Disney. And they said, Duane, in 4 days, we're going to announce that we're going to build a lab just like yours. Let's use this for our morning television. And so those insights ended up going into Good Morning America. And at that point, Good Morning America really cranked up its focus on empathy, which propelled it in its ratings.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of this session with Dr. Duane Varan, a trendsetter in research, development, in advertising, in media, a true Renaissance man of so many diverse skills and experiences. So anyway, moving on, Duane, we talked about your job or your position or your life as an educator. Then we moved on into your management within a research arena. But you're also an entrepreneur. You're a very successful businessman. So how does all of that affect your business today?
Well, that was totally accidental. That was not intentional. I had no aspiration to be working in private business. I fully expected that I was going to be an academic for the rest of my career. But, I got drafted into industry. And the background to that is that my research center was pioneering this new approach to media research, which proved to be very effective. And a number of industry players would sponsor our research. They would give us funding because they thought that the path that we were on was so exciting and there were so many opportunities with it. And this was not commercial research. This was academic research, but they were funding the academic work. And then one day in 2008, out of the blue, on the Friday before Mother's Day, I got a call from Disney. And they said, Duane, in 4 days, it's going to be our big annual conference. And we're going to announce that we're going to build a lab just like yours, doing exactly the kinds of research methods that you're doing, because we've been looking at what you're doing and we know that this is the key to us moving forward. And so we're going to do this. And we've looked, and there's literally nobody else in the world who knows how to do what you do. So you have to come and work for us. We have 4 days to negotiate a deal with you. Tell us, how big do we have to sign the check? We're here.
Wow.
We're telling you we're going to sign a check. What does it take?
Said, where were they located?
I was in Australia. I was in Perth,
Australia. Disney in Australia.
No. This was Disney in the US. This was executives on the phone in LA and in New York. I said, Disney, I love you guys. Thank you so much. I'm very flattered. But no, I'm very happy as an academic and I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave Australia. I don't want to leave the university. Thanks, but no thanks. And they said, well, don't say no
to Disney.
What would it take? And I'm sitting on the phone and I'm thinking, well, I don't know if I don't want to compromise my independence. So it would have to be an independent business. I'd have to own it. It would cost a lot of money because I need these labs and you'd have to pay it, but I'd have to own it and I'd have to own all the IP. I mean, I was saying anything I could think of. I was like, what else can I think of? And I kept going on and on and on. I need this. I want to live in Australia. I don't want to live there. I still want to be an academic. They said, okay, that's all fine.
And they were okay with you being independent.
Me being independent, it'd be a private business.
Even though they're funding it.
Even though they're funding it. Yes, it cost millions of dollars to build my lab. They said, we'll build it. They said, we only have one condition. What's that? You have to be exclusive to Disney. I said, sure, I'll be exclusive to Disney. And so out of that was born what was originally called the Disney Media and Advertising Lab. And that was my private business. I actually owned it. It was 100% my own business. And after 5 years, that came out of its exclusivity restriction with Disney. And then I could take on other clients. And of course, by that stage, there was a queue out the door because this was an opportunity for people to work with the Disney Lab. So then pretty much every major TV network became a client of ours. And again, I had nothing to do with that.
You're working out of Australia.
I was doing this while being an academic. I was still a university professor. It was based in Austin during those initial years. And then after we came out of exclusivity, we expanded to Chicago. Now we have an office in Times Square in New York. So the business has grown, from where it was originally, but I had nothing to do with it. I was literally dragged into the role.
Your success, you were a trendsetter in within that world, within the lab, the sort of lab that you created. They wanted that.
Yeah, I've always been a strong believer in following the path to truth. In my research, there are frequently occasions where what we discover is a massive disruption to convention. It's the kiss of death normally for a researcher to publish something like that because nobody's going to want to work with you. But I've always been very upfront. Even when the research conflicts with my own interest, we publish the research. And what that has done over time is that has just given us a reputation and a certain kind of credibility for being trustworthy. When people see the results of our studies, they have very high confidence that that's a truth. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Duane, I'm looking at my phone over there to see what time it is because I know you're pressed for time. So there's 3 things that I want to still explore. I'll say them now, and then I leave them up to you to see how within the time frame we have, you can divide that up. One, I'm really interested in the podcasts you do because they're about society building, and a lot of the stuff that you cover there is about this polarization that's taking over the world. And that is a very important subject to me personally. And also it's in line with what we do here at Panacea9. So I like that to be explored. And I also believe you've been a journalist as well.
I haven't been a journalist, but I've done a lot of research for news organizations. So,
okay.
So I'm acquainted with the challenges of journalism from a research angle, if you will.
All right. So maybe you can share some of that.
Let's start with journalism because it ties in with where we were in our last little discussion.
Okay.
So I began doing this work with all these organizations. And one of the things that your viewers will immediately know is that the face of journalism has changed a lot. Right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And in particular, what we have all witnessed in our lives is the death of what we would have thought of before as objective journalism. And the thing that's so sad, and again, most of the news networks are clients of mine: CNN, Fox News, ABC News, CBS News, MSNBC. They're all clients of mine, and I deal with all of them. And nobody in our industry has even a little aspiration for objective news anymore. Objective news has proven to be a ratings killer, and everybody is running away from objective news as fast as they can. And it's very, very, very tragic to see. The background to how this all happened is news wasn't always objective. The concept of objective news is a relatively modern phenomena. It happened, believe it or not, with the invention of the telegraph. The telegraph was the primary vehicle, if you will, for the rise of objective news. And before the telegraph, news was partisan. You subscribed to the newspaper that reflected your political view. But what happened was the only thing that was more powerful than perspective was speed. And so if there was a war during the Civil War, if there was a particular battle, news of that battle could come back through a telegraph instantly. So people then wanted to get the story fast first, And so what happened was these wire services were created. It was very expensive to transmit on a telegraph. And so what they did is, if you were first to get the story, you had to transmit the story in a way which they could sell to right and left, to everybody. And so that concept of objective news was born. Now, flash forward to the digital age, and that dynamic works exactly in the other direction. Suddenly, that scale is no longer what it's about. Now it becomes about perspective. I had done a project for ABC News, which was very exciting at one stage. It did actually make it to air, but not in news. It made it into their morning television. It actually was one of the keys to propelling Good Morning America to becoming first in the market at the time. But the background to this was I was meeting with the president of ABC News, and he was saying, we want an alternative. We don't want it to be a political alternative. We don't want it to be whether we're going right or left. We're a broadcaster. We want an alternative to objective news that is still broad, but not political. And so I came up with this idea, which was news with empathy. And so the idea was figure out how to help, because the thing is, the actual news itself, people already know before they watch television because of the internet. So it's not about speed. The question is, what can you replace speed with? And the idea was, let's figure out how to tell the story in a way where people can feel the story instead of just knowing the story. I had that moment where it actually got translated into practice. And then I was on a flight from the meeting going to our lab at the time in Austin. And in the flight, at 30,000 feet up in the air, I wrote an email. And that email that I wrote ended up being my Jerry Maguire moment. It was the moment that destroyed my whole idea. And I wrote to him and I said, we were talking about how good this would be for ratings, and it will be good for ratings. But let me tell you what this will do in other ways. And I went on to explain all the social benefits that this would provide, how this would help marriages because people would learn to look at problems, with an empathic view, how it would help race relations, how it would make their employees proud to be at the organization. I was just talking about all these things. Suddenly, I came across looking like a hippie. He didn't pull the project, but like I say, he took it and he said, look, I don't think this is good for news. Let's use this for our morning television. Good Morning America really cranked up its focus on empathy, which propelled it in its ratings and took it to number
Wonderful.
one.
At least they used it somewhere.
Is somewhere, not
It
not
still
in the news.
benefited some people. I'm a news junkie, and I watch all the cable networks that you just mentioned, and they're supposed to be news, but it's all infighting or talking against this one and talking against that one. It's sometimes I wonder where's the news in there, and
no,
you're right.
It's terrible. That's terrible.
It's all gone, destroyed.
With consequence. With consequence. It contributes to the polarization. So that might be a good seg into our discussion about
polarization. Because that is indeed the cause. Well, not the cause, but it's helping this polarization.
Yes, it's definitely a contributor to the problem of polarization. So now we go to that. So a few years ago, in 2021, December of 2021, one day I wake up in the morning and I read a message from the Universal House of Justice. So for your viewership, in the Baha'i community, we have no clergy, but we have communities. And, we have a very active community life. Baha'i communities, are constantly working on trying to improve the conditions in their communities, the conditions in the world around us. And so even though we don't have clergy, we do have community. And to organize a community, you have to have some structure. And so Baha'is have this process, which was given to us by our prophet founder, Baha'u'llah, which is the most democratic system on the face of the planet. It's incredible because in every Baha'i community, people elect a council of 9 to help administer to the needs of that community. There's no campaigning allowed, no nomination allowed. People are literally drafted into the role by the will of their community. And it's a phenomenal thing to see in action. Then all the local communities elect regional bodies, the regional communities, delegates elect a national body. So every country has a council of 9 who help administer the needs of the Baha'i community in that country. And all the national assemblies around the world elect a body, which we call the Universal House of Justice, which coordinates the activities of Baha'i communities around the world. Right. And again, very democratic, a phenomenal thing to see. There's nothing like it on the face of the planet where literally, an industrialist in New York has the same voice as a villager in Papua New Guinea. I mean, it's just a phenomenal thing to see. Right. So in December.
Before you move on, you touched on something that is very dear to my heart. I served the Universal House of Justice in Haifa for 9 years. My older son, Bayan, was born there. And I was at 2 of those conventions where the members of the Universal House of Justice were elected. And it is incredible to see the spiritual energy there, the spiritual forces and this dignity and the way that the democratic way that you mentioned, but also the dignity involved in it.
And
These and the diversity, and these members, the most humble individuals I've come across with, and when they're called up on stage after the votes are done, they're all standing like this with their heads down. No pomp, no glory, only service to
Yes, it's
humanity.
amazing to see,
It is
again, what
incredible.
So in 2021, on December 30th of 2021, I wake up in the morning and there was a message from the Universal House of Justice to the Baha'is of the world, which laid out the vision, not just for the next year or the next 5 years, but for the next 25 years. And it said that Baha'is will have a singular focus for the next 25 years. And that singular focus was around this theme of society building. I didn't even get past the first page. I got past the first 2 paragraphs when I said, wow, for 25 years, this is going to be our singular focus. I need to make sure that I have a vehicle so that I stay on top of this. So I said, you know what? If I have a podcast that will force me, so that there's an episode once a month, that's going to force me to stay on top of this theme. So I decided then and there to host a podcast series. And I didn't know anything about it, really. I mean, I decided I needed a theme song. So I had to go out there and write a song and find over the internet. I found singers and musicians and put this all together. And I started, which was this podcast. And I did that in the first month. So the first month after this message came, I began hosting my Society Builders podcast.
Sorry, did you write the song yourself?
I did.
So you're a musician as well?
Yes. So my singer is Nolo, who I found over the internet, and he sings out of South Africa. In the journey of Society Builders of my podcast, very quickly, I got to what Baha'is call discourse, which is the social dialogue around issues of the day. And one of the most pressing issues in the world today, without a doubt, is polarization. We're becoming more and more divided as people everywhere this is happening. I love doing the podcast series. It's truly a passion project for me. I get excited every month when I get to do another episode.
Thank you again, Duane, for joining us. We know how busy you are.
Thank you, Gloria. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun little journey. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun for me, so I hope it was for you as well. I'm in awe of your accomplishments. Honestly, it's amazing, and it's very inspiring for me when I come across people who believed in something and they use that conviction, that belief to build on their lives, and as a result ended up helping a lot of other people, a lot of other groups, a lot of other organizations. So really, it touches my heart and it inspires me. And I hope that it inspires our viewers as well. Goodbye to everyone. Thank you, folks. Bye, Duane. From scattered fragments to global unity, healing our world together.